we're recording.
Thank you. Okay, folks, welcome to the special meeting of the town of Fairfield, Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. We have a pinch hitter tonight, Ann Roche. Can you please call the roll? Welcome back.
Thanks. Okay. Edward Bateson. Melissa Longo. Marty Fury. Amy Ruggiero.
Here.
Karen McCormick.
Here.
Cindy Perham. Here. Jeff Steele. Alex Durrell.
Here.
Jeff Galdenzi.
Here.
Tom Lambert.
Here.
Sharon Pistilli.
Here.
Laura Carson.
Here.
Alice Kelly.
Here.
Marcy Spoliar.
Here.
Liz Ezema. Will Diaz.
Here.
Josh Garskoff.
Here.
Joe Siebert.
Here.
Jay Walk.
Here.
Steve Barris.
Here.
Hannah Gale. Here. Andrew Graceffa.
Here.
Lisa Havey. John Kuhn.
Here.
Mark McDermott.
Here.
Joe Vergara.
Here.
Karen Wackerman.
Here.
Hank Ferentz.
Here.
Pam Iacono. Christine Messina. Peter Tallman. Christine Brown.
Here.
Drew Georgiadis.
Here.
Margaret Horton.
Here.
Kelly Cinto. Ken Astorita.
Here.
Peter Britton.
Here.
Frank Batiste.
Here.
Story Tallman.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, let's all please stand for the pledge.
Oh, I'm here. Marty Fury's here.
Thank you, Marty. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to go to item 2 now, to consider and act upon the following resolution as requested by the Registrar of Voters. Whereas because the redistricting of Fairfield's RTM districts has not been completed and the town state assembly districts have been changed, the town has 17 voting districts. And whereas the registrars of Fairfield must determine the polling places for those 17 districts in upcoming primary elections, if any, and the November elections, and whereas the registrars have agreed to polling places for 13 of the districts, but have not agreed on polling locations for 4 of the districts, now be it resolved that the following voting districts be assigned to the polling places set forth below, and such polling places are hereby approved for such districts for all elections taking place in 2022. Voting District 132-10, polling place Pequot Library, 133-02 and 133-04 Stratfield School, 134-02 North Stratfield School. Can I have a motion to approve? Representative Graceffa, seconded by Representative Kelly. I would like, is Mr. Elworthy here? Or is Ms. Politi?
Yes, the Politi is
Like
here.
to speak. Thank you. Introduce yourself, please. And
Hi, I'm Kathy Politi, and I'm the Deputy Registrar of Voters here in Fairfield. Recent position, only a few weeks.
thank you. Did you want to add anything? You sent a letter late this afternoon. I don't know if you want to add any other points or make any further
Yes.
comments.
You know, if anybody didn't actually read that letter, I would recommend that they do so. and also see the attached from the Secretary of State Attorney. And our stance is that we do not want the polling locations changed, as we feel that would be very confusing to the voters, and it could lead to disenfranchisement of them if they show up, to the poll they're used to. It may cause a problem. They may just say, I don't want to go to the next poll if this isn't the correct one.
Okay, just to be clear, in that letter, are you no longer supporting the 13 polling places that were agreed upon on your meeting on Friday with Mr. Wagner, the Democratic Registrar of Voters?
There was no agreement on Friday. There was just discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Wagner, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll say, it's first off, thank you all for being here this evening. I know, especially from the people I've talked about this with a lot, this is not a subject that brings people a lot of joy to be involved in, and you have my, I guess, both gratitude and apologies that we've roped you into this. I think there is a lot of consensus in what spots we have for most of the town. There's a couple of questions I think that are what to do in districts where there is a polling place that we could use, but we have not been using it. And separately, a question for what to do in districts where you have no suitable polling places, right? Where both I and my counterpart agree on whether there's a school building or another suitable place to vote. And when there's not, do we have them vote in a neighboring district where they used to go, like last year and years previous? Or do you have them go to a district where the same ballot is in use? I have put together a few slides, which I'd be happy to show people. But if, I guess what I would say is, with your, if I don't know how much information people want about this, I could do 10 minutes. If you sat me down, I could do 8 hours. But if people kind of know what they want to do, I'd be happy to also not make a presentation of that nature if you don't think it would be beneficial to you.
You could make it quick, because
All right.
Please, Matt.
All right. Well, let me bring this up here. I learned in the redistricting meetings how to share a screen, so let me do that. So here's just a few slides I'll put together. The charge, not the charge, the resolution says some of this. Registrars are responsible for assigning polling places. We've had 17 districts since November 18th, actually, of last year. The reason we have 17 districts is we're required to follow both the ordinance that the town passed in 2014, maybe in January 2015, I'm not sure, as well as the new state representative lines. Like, both of those things have to be followed by us. Until the town redistricts, we're going to have 17. So we put these in our computer in December 2021, but we haven't actually assigned polling places to them because we were optimistic about the prospect of the RTM doing a redistricting prior to this year's elections. So now we're kind of at the time where we need to, prepare for the election and tell people where they have to go and all of that. Now, we had budgeted, and we're sort of grateful to the Kupchak administration for allowing us to budget for sort of the worst case scenario, which is where we would have to actually equip and staff 17 districts. Unfortunately, in the budget process, the Board of Finance cut the funds for that, which put us in sort of a bad position. Some of the options that we might want to do, that we might be able to agree to, I think are not really possible anymore after that situation. But we're sort of downstream from those decisions. So what we tried to do was talk about what options we could put on the table that would allow us to go within budget and be as sort of both minimally disruptive and sort of most protective of the integrity of the process and sort of avoid the problems that we've experienced in the past when we've had multiple polling places voting in the same spot. So just a question that we get asked a lot, I know that a lot of RTM people talk about this, is do we need to redistrict this year? And the answer is no. We have 17 districts until the redistricting is done, and this is one of the things we have to sort of resolve as a consequence of that. Now, Polling places in general have to be inside the voting districts that they serve, and there's a deadline of 31 days before a primary or election in which they're used, and we have to use the same locations in the primary and the general. So there's some references there if you're interested in that stuff. If we agree, right, the registrars, that there's no suitable or convenient location in any given district, either we or the RTM can designate a polling place in another district as near as possible to the district where there's no suitable spot. The deadline for that is 90 days prior, which is tomorrow. So thank you all for meeting on this timeline. And there are several spots where we do agree that there aren't any suitable locations. Now, another question I think we get a lot, and I think is driving a lot of this, and the reason I put this stuff in here is actually to say, I know there's been a lot of like legal memos and stuff flying around, and I think it's important to mention that I actually don't think there's a lot of disagreement on what's possible and what we can do. I think the debate and discussion is whether it is wise to do all of the things that we can possibly do. I would say, this question of can everyone vote in the same place this year as they did last year? And I agree that it is possible to do that, right? Like, I'm not saying no, that is not allowable. And I think we sort of built up this myth of a sort of a debate or dispute about that legal question. I think if the registrars agree to make every part of a district that is not currently, doesn't have a current polling place inside of it, vote in the place where they used to, we could do that. Now, the problem is, first off, that requires us to sort of certify something that we know is not true in several cases, which, we're allowed to do, right? We could, the language that something is convenient or suitable gives you a lot of latitude to say, I don't think it's convenient, right? So I'm going to say it's not convenient, so we're not going to use it. But the other problem is that when you have multiple districts voting at the same polling place, there are staffing and equipment costs, and the extent to which those are necessary is sort of something that we could debate or whatever, but the costs associated with that are no longer in our budget. So sort of two different problems associated with that. Now, we did meet last week. We had, despite sort of bringing it up every time my fellow registrars in the office for the last couple of months, the first time we discussed it was this past Friday. We did discuss some locations. We sort of put down all 17 where we wanted. 13 of them matched. And so I sent out the message. It's in your packet. At that time, I guess definitely had the impression that there was an agreement on those spots. I wouldn't be so bold as to send an email to everyone while they're still in the office, asserting that there was, if there wasn't, right? That would be pretty wild. But in any case, times change and things can be misconstrued. So at this point, there is no agreement on those 13. And so we're not going to require you, I guess, for all 17. Now, we've made recommendations to you as an RTM, but if you feel that something else is appropriate that is not on the list we've put forward, the power's in your hands at this point, right? So that's exciting and terrifying, and hopefully you use it, the power appropriately. But if you pick a spot, for example, there's a district where we couldn't find any polling places because we have a couple of churches. We have the American Legion Hall. This is what you know is District 4. We're calling it 13304 in our sort of current arrangement of districts, where we don't have a place that we've been using in the district, and there are large buildings that we could use, but we haven't been able to get commitments from any of them. So you could, as a group, say, we want you to vote at the American Legion Hall, or we want you to vote at Congregation Bethel on Fairfield Woods Road, because those are in the district. And if you do that, and we discover down the road that the spot you've asked us to vote in is not available to us, then we would still be able to say, okay, well, we can, on an emergency basis, move those people to a different location within 31 days, which is something that the statutes envision. Now, this chart just sort of shows what I had proposed, what the Republicans had proposed, what I suggested to kind of meet halfway, as well as over here on the right, as what the current proposal that I understand from Kathy's email this afternoon, which says, we want every spot to be where it was previously. It does sort of exhaust our supply of materials and have some more people associated with working in that election, but I won't sort of dwell on that. I think people have a good good sense of that already. I think I have one more slide. Oh, two more slides. So these are the districts on the left where we already have a polling place we use inside the borders. And I think that I and my counterpart have a consensus that that's what we want to do, right? We don't want to move people for no reason if there's already a district in if there's already a polling place in their district. In the center, you see some districts with no suitable polling places in them, two of which have been that way for a long time, Stratfield and McKinley, District 4 and District 6, and a couple on the right of districts where there are places that we could use, but my counterpart does not want to use those. So here's a map of what you're looking at. All the pink, I think, is something where we don't have a lot of discussion or debate about what we're actually going to be using. The areas that are orange are spots where you have polling places in the district, but my proposal says you should use them. The Republican proposal says you should not. And the areas that are blue are areas where we agree there's no suitable location in the district, and the question is, where do we have them move? And the question for you is really, do you have them move to another polling place in the same state rep district, or to the old polling place that they used to go to, which is in a different state rep district? So the big advantage to using the old location is you don't make anyone who's been voting year after year go to a new spot. My experience with that, and we've had a few polling places have to change over the course of my time as a registrar, last 10 years. The voters handle it pretty well so long as you provide them with adequate notice. We put a sign up at the old spot, and we have very little by way of like complaints or confusion because we make sure that we mail them. And I do find also that the campaigns adapt to that pretty well. They, people doing get out the vote will tell their voters, here's where you have to go, and make sure that message is delivered. So that's the advantage of using the old polling place. The disadvantage of using a polling place in the same state rep district is that you do make more people change, right? Now, the advantage is using the same state rep district location is that you have a shorter travel distance, and that's the case in all of these blue districts where we have sort of two different options. It does allow us to operate within the funds allocated to us in the budget. And because you are allowed to, by statute, have all of the voters in that district get into the same line, right? So you don't have to have like a separate line with separate staff to handle a polling, a list of voters that only has 50 people or 200 people on it. It allows us to have sort of a simple experience inside the polling place, and it prevents error. And the big error I think that we're concerned about, that we see a lot of the time that you get when we have split districts voting in the same spot, and this is talking to my colleagues around the state, this is something that is experienced everywhere where this is done, which is that people will be handed the wrong ballot, right? You're repeating a process where voters are getting in line and being checked off and going to get a ballot and having it handed to them. You're repeating that 20 or 30,000 times in a day, and uniformly, someone always gets the wrong one when that happens, right? Other towns of our size I was talking to this week, Stratford, Greenwich, Norwalk, it just happens every time you do it. And you have to say, well, if it's a couple of ballots, as long as the election's not close, maybe you don't need to worry about it that much. But we do have elections that are very close here. That risk is kind of top of mind, which is protecting the outcome of the results from like legal challenges and lack of confidence, or you say a procedural error of some kind caused the election outcome to change, which makes everyone not trust the results. So that to me is the sort of the main motivating factor for saying don't put two state rep districts in the same room, even if you argue that you could, which we could go back and forth about that for a really long time. Whether or not you could, and I agree that we got this letter from the Secretary of State. They saw a copy of the statute that had a few of the words about how when you have a split district, it requires a separate polling place. That was taken out of what was sent to them. They responded saying, yes, that's correct. And so I agree that allows us to do CYA on this issue if we need to, if that's what we were going to do. We would be able to blame them if our election was chaotic. So that's, but I'm not looking for someone to blame. I'm looking to have an orderly election to the best of my ability. So, so those are sort of the considerations that you have. I did see a couple of sort of messages pop up. They have a question. I don't know if they're for me or for the moderator, or if people want me to be quiet, but at this point I will, unless the moderator, Mr. Moderator, you asked me to sort of chirp back in. So let me figure out how to unshare my screen here.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Representative Wackerman, you have a comment? Yes, you are unshared. Thank you. You have an amendment? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, I want to first thank Mr. Wagner because I know how hard he's been working on this, and I imagine it's been very frustrating to not have anybody work with him until Friday. And I was part of some conversations Friday, and it was clear that there was an agreement on the 13 districts. But because that's now being reneged or whatever, I'd like to make an amendment to our resolution to add those 13 districts. I just sent it to Anne, and I can read it. It's going to be long, but give me 1 second. So it would be to consider.
I think you probably want to start in the third whereas, right?
Yeah. So whereas the registrars have agreed on polling places for none of the districts and have not agreed on polling places for any of the districts, now be it resolved that the following voting districts be assigned to the polling places set forth below, and that such polling places are hereby approved for such districts for all elections taking place in 2022. District 132-3, Holland Hill, 132-6, Holland Hill, 132-7, Holland Hill, 132-8, Fairfield Ludlow High School, 132-09, Sherman, 132-10, Pequot Library, 133-02, Stratfield School, 133-03, Woods, 133-04, Stratfield, 133-05, Fairfield Ward High School, 133-06, McKinley, 133-07, McKinley, 134-01, Dwight, 134-02, North Stratfield, 134-03, Osborne Hill, 134-08, Mill Hill, and 134-10, Mill Hill. So my motion is to amend the resolution to read as I just read.
Maybe just to make it less confusion, I think whereas the registrars have agreed on polling places for none of the districts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then now be it. I don't think you need the rest of it, right?
Right. You're right. Now be it. Yep.
Can I have a motion to approve? Representative Spolier, seconded by Representative Carson. Okay. Well, that's the amendment to the original motion.
Mark, do you need anything more from me? Did his computer freeze? Oh, no.
Sorry, I had an issue there. Okay, do we have any comments on the amendment from the body? All right, Seeing none, let's vote on the,
Mr. Moderator, I have a general question which not specific to the amendment, I think would pertain nonetheless. I'd like to ask that question if that's possible.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. My question is for Attorney Baldwin. I'd like if he could
Just say,
explain.
sorry, just say who it is, Ken, please.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Ken Astorita, District 10. Apologize. My question is for Attorney Baldwin. I'd like if he could explain the necessity why we have a deadline to vote on this this evening.
This is Attorney Baldwin. The answer to your question is you do not have a necessity to vote on this evening. The applicable statute is 9-169, together with 9-169A that addresses split voting districts in situations exactly as the one before you, which is when you have the General Assembly redo the district lines for assembly seats, and yet the local voting districts, in this case of the RTM, have not been realigned accordingly. That statute 9-169A allows you expressly to continue to use those same voting districts. It doesn't require that you do that, mind you. But what is not applicable is the statute 9-168B, which has a 90-day requirement prior to any primary, that primary being, I believe, on August 9th. So rather than having to do this 90 days before August 9th, you have until roughly July 5th or 6th for the registrars to meet and to confer and hopefully agree upon the appropriate polling locations. I'm not saying that I don't have an opinion, and I would not opine that this meeting is inappropriate. I think that the RTM has the ability to hold this meeting, and if it so chooses to make a determination based on the apparent logjam with the registrars. But my only point being that this may be considered premature since you have at least 45 days or so for those registrars to come to an agreement. And if I may just add one other thing, Mr. Moderator, there's a bit of a misnomer here about the voting districts. The voting districts at issue are the 3 assembly voting districts. Those are the voting districts which are required to have at least one polling location within each. And they certainly would under the past situation or the past polling locations that have been used for the past decade. The 17 RTM districts, of course, are supposed to be realigned or aligned so that they comport with those voting districts. But the legislature recognized the situation that the town is in right now, and hence the reason for passing the legislation in 9-169A addressing split voting districts, and the opinion of the legal opinion of the Secretary of State's office clearly states that the 9-168B statute, which sets forth the 90-day deadline, is not applicable.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question would be then to you, Mr. Moderator, why are we having this meeting and why are we having to decide this on 24 hours notice?
Well, basically the registrars came to me and asked to have the meeting. Like I said, as of Friday, there were 13 districts agreed to, or polling locations agreed to. They couldn't reach agreement on the last 4 when there was, I believe, going to be some compromise made, but it never happened. It could have happened yesterday. It could have happened today, and it never happened. So I was hoping to cancel this meeting, Mr. Astorita, but that didn't happen. So that's why we're here tonight.
Well, I don't know why compromise can't be reached tomorrow or Thursday or Friday at some point down the road here.
The date is May 11th for for the 90-day. There's two different deadlines, and They chose the
Attorney
90
Baldwin,
day deadline.
Attorney Baldwin just said we have until I believe it's sometime in early January to make a decision on this. What
No,
what
that's-
attorney
that's-
are being relied upon here?
That's incorrect. July was
Early
July for the primaries, if there are any primaries, is the date. It's either 90 days, which is tomorrow, or 31 days, which is sometime in July.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, sir.
this is Attorney Baldwin again. There is no 90-day deadline that is applicable to the determination of the polling locations for the primary and general election in November. That is not applicable here. I state that with just absolute certainty. And that is supported by the Secretary of State's office under their authority, under General Statutes 9-3, which gives them purview over such matters and under which that opinion letter was issued.
Mr. Moderator, on whose legal opinion are you relying on the 90 days?
This is, Mr. Baldwin, this is applicable to the primaries, which is the 90 days from now.
That is incorrect, Mr. Moderator. That is contrary to my opinion, which is based on the statutes and the opinion of the Secretary of State's legal counsel. With all due respect.
Mr. Moderator, whose legal opinion are you relying on for this 90-day deadline?
Representative Wackerman.
Is Representative Wackerman a
Point of
lawyer
order,
attorney?
point of
No.
order, Mr. Moderator, point of order.
He is not relying on my legal opinion. I just wanted to jump in here because we're here for a meeting because the Republican registrar refused to help work on this at all. There's no reason to think that will change in the next 60 days. We're here also because some of us believe the 90 days does apply. I'm not sure I consider that email an actual official opinion, personally. And we're here now, so we shouldn't be debating whether we have to do this now or end the meeting and come back in 60 days. We're here to do this now, so I think this is a moot point.
Well, no, I don't think it's a moot point because I guess my
I
point is
do.
there's still time for compromise to be reached here, and we're voting on something with 24 hours notice where we've hardly had any chance to take a look at it and make a legitimate assessment on whether it's the right or wrong thing to do.
We think that there is a dispute as to whether there's a 90-day or 30-day time frame, and we don't want to risk that we miss this chance
Well,
to approve voting. I'm speaking, Ken. I know you're speaking also. I'll give you a turn in a second. We just don't want to risk that there's that the Secretary of State's lawyer who wrote that email is wrong, which I think is a possibility. And we're here, and it's not like the Republican registrars tried to do this. The few times they sort of began to do it, they were stopped. So there's no reason to think this will ever happen. And also the opinion was requested on the opinion was asked for, is it true that we can have only 10 districts? I mean, there was never any real discussion, and I think it was all not helpful. But anyway, I think we should just move on and vote on the amendment, and if you don't agree with it, you can vote no.
no, I appreciate that. But I guess my point is, I'm looking at this trying to figure out what's in the best interest of the town, and it's a lot of information to absorb very quickly. And so that's my point is, you're saying that there's that we have to do this tonight for some reason, and I guess my question is, on whose legal opinion are you relying? The town attorney said we do not need to do this tonight. So my question is, whose legal opinion are you relying on?
There's
that
no
requires us
legal
to do this
opinion
tonight?
required, as Mr. Baldwin just pointed out, there's no opinion needed to say you can do this meeting today. So if there's the question of 90 days or 30 days or whatever, but Mr. Moderator, I'm wondering if through you to Mr. Wagner, he could address this, perhaps?
Mr. Moderator, may I just make two brief points in response to Representative Wackerman's comments?
Yes, Mr. Baldwin, and then Mr. Wagner, I'd like to hear from you.
First of all, the opinion was generated as a result of my discussions and collaboration and understanding of the Mr. Wagner in particular's belief that that statute 9-168B applied. And if you look at the opinion and the email chain that was part of it, there's questions presented by Mr. Wagner, which addressed various questions about how many moderators you would need, whether the existing districts could be used, and the result of that was my request for an opinion from the Secretary of State's office. So this was not just from out of the blue, it was to try to clarify the situation and give the proper landscape for the registrars upon which they could, move ahead and try to reach an agreement. The other thing I just want to mention is that the opinion states expressly that it's issued pursuant to 9-3 of the Connecticut General Statutes, which is the statute that gives the Secretary of State's office the authority to issue such opinions that should be followed by municipalities in these situations. And it was also done by collaboration, not just with this attorney, but also I understand Mr. Bromley was consulted prior to this being issued. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Mr. Wagner.
Hey there. Is there what's the specific question you have, Mr. Moderator?
Representative Wackerman had a question for you, and
I'm wondering, Matt, if you could respond to the suggestion that 168A doesn't apply. I know that you're not a lawyer, but I know that you do this and you've done this for many years.
Yeah, I guess I'll say it's there's 6 sections, 9-168 to 9-169F that sort of define the parameters of both redistricting and selecting polling places in Connecticut. As a general rule, our attitude is that we have to follow all the statutes simultaneously, not just choose the one that we want to and say the other ones we can ignore. The voting district statute says that you have to have your polling place inside the district, and the exceptions to that all sort of point to this 90-day requirement. 9-169A, which is the subject matter at hand for the request Mr. Baldwin made to the Secretary of State's office, is not about polling places. It's about voting districts. And the voting districts, in that statute say that each voting district created by the division of a voting district by a state representative or state senate line must have a separate polling place. Like that actually says that directly. His request to the Secretary of State's office omitted those words, so they gave the advice that they did. I'm not sure really what I can say about that. It is sort of an uncomfortable and strange situation, and it conflicts with sort of a very large stack of opinions that we've received from them in the past about what section, under what conditions polling places may be merged. But let's just say I do agree, and rather than sort of dwell on this subject endlessly, I do agree that once we got that opinion from them, regardless of whether it actually correctly quotes the statutes or omits the most important words from the statutes, that we probably could go ahead and have voting be in the same room and risk people getting the wrong ballots and all of this, even though every component of the statutes appears to try to prohibit that. Once they gave us that opinion, we could go ahead and do it. Like, I'll agree with that we can. My point that I'm trying to sort of reinforce is that we should not, right? That's the risk to the integrity, the additional costs, all of these problems that sort of come up as a result of that, and the options that we have sort of at a later date. Like, if we're having this meeting like literally 5 minutes before the deadline, do we all wind up in court trying to sort of resolve this question, or do we get it settled now in a timely way so we can actually begin telling voters where they're supposed to go, which we have not done for the last 7 months. You know, I think, like, yes, we could do exactly what the town attorney is saying. I don't disagree with that. I just don't think that we should. And I'm grateful that the RTM is breaking the months-long impasse of discussing polling places that we've had.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. I'm going to go back up to, I really want to take questions on the amendment. Representative McCormick, you had 2 questions for both the registrars. Is it on the amendment or just in general? What's your?
Well, I'm not really sure how to parse this out on the amendment versus not the amendment. It's on the whole reason why we're here. I have a question for Ms. Politi. Ms. Politi, are you still on the call here?
Yes, I am.
All right. And you participated in a meeting on Friday, which is what's been represented to us in a correspondence that's been actually sent in as part of the backup
Correct.
to create this meeting. Before, let me just back up. The contents of that, the correspondence from Mr. Wagner, do you agree with the contents of that document, that it reflects your understanding of what took place at that meeting?
No, I do not. We really, our desire is to keep these polling locations the same.
Okay.
You
And
know.
he's represented to us as the legislative body here, I guess, that when you left on Friday, there was an agreement as to 13 polling locations. Is that your understanding as to what happened when you left your meeting on Friday?
No, there was no agreement.
Okay. And were you asked to submit any documents along with Mr. Wagner to present as part of the backup for this meeting?
No, we were not.
And what was your reaction when you saw the backup that was provided for this meeting, in that it contained only the Democrat Registrar of Voters version of the events? Did you have any reaction to that?
Yes, I was disappointed because there was no, nothing, was indicated that that was a deal at all.
And did Mr. Wagner share the contents of what he was submitting for the backup of this meeting with you for your chance to review and possibly add on to or append to what his version of the events were to create the backup for this meeting?
Say that again? Sorry.
Did Mr. Wagner reach out to you to review what he was submitting so that you could either append or add on to or somehow weigh in on what your version of the events were?
No.
Okay, so the only backup that we got initially for this meeting was the version of the events by the Democrat Registrar of Voters, Mr. Matt Wagner. Is that correct?
Correct.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner, you in fact believe that you know the statutes better than the town attorney. Isn't that true?
I don't think that that's the case.
Okay. Mr. Baldwin, Attorney Baldwin, who's the town attorney for the town of Fairfield, has weighed in on his opinion, his legal opinion, as a member of the bar of the state of Connecticut, and he's given a legal opinion to you and to many other people in connection with, number one, the time frames under which we are under to make sure that we get this situation straightened out before the primary and the election. Isn't that true?
Well, you speak to his being a member of the bar and all of this. I really don't know anything about that. I think if you look at that email exchange, you'll see that I had a number of questions, particularly why he chose to omit the words polling place from our discussion of the statute about whether polling places were required in split districts. So, I don't really know what to make of that opinion and why I was unable to get responses to my questions as to why certain phrases were omitted from that. I do think it's, we've had lengthy discussions with Mr. Baldwin in the past. I'm always sort of open to the possibility that people will know about a section of the statutes or know about a court ruling or have, legal opinions from the Secretary of State's office that speak to these issues that are something I didn't know about, right? Like, I don't think that I know everything there is to know. I think that people are going to bring stuff in that I didn't know about, and that's great, right? And that's sort of, if you have the expertise or the knowledge or the resources to find that stuff, you know, I think that we should all sort of come into this open to getting that kind of information. That was not, you know, I didn't get that information when I asked for it. I said, you know, why, you know, what effect does the words polling place have in the statute? And I was just sort of stonewalled at that point. No, I don't, you know, I don't think I know more about the statutes in general. You know, I think this is an area, it's not long, right? These sections of the law are not long. They're not hard to understand. And, you know, I would encourage everyone to read them, right? And you know, read the sort of plain language that is in them. But, you know, I don't know.
Mr. Wagner, getting back to my question, you believe that you have superior knowledge over the election laws in the state of Connecticut than the town of Fairfield's attorney, Mr. Jim Baldwin, and the Secretary of State's attorney. Isn't that true?
No, I wouldn't say that's true. I have a familiarity with the statutes.
Okay, and the Secretary of State's office, their attorney, Ada Carini, has issued an opinion letter that the statute that you're relying on to drag us to this meeting 90 days before the primary actually is not applicable. Isn't that true?
No, that's not true. That was actually not the subject matter of that email exchange.
Okay, but in her opinion...
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. It seems that our guest, Mr. Wagner, is being cross-examined. I wonder if at some point, I also think perhaps Representative McCormick has extended her time.
Yeah, this cross-examination that seems to be going on.
My point is...
Attorney Baldwin, Attorney Baldwin, you have no horse in this game. You said that basically. You said we don't have to do it, but we can do it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I would like to add that, contrary to what was just said, at the conclusion of that opinion, it says that as none of the voting districts would be left without a polling location, the adjacent polling location statute is not applicable here, nor is the section of that statute which states that there needs to be 2 separate rooms for voting. So I think that's a pretty clear statement by the Secretary of State office saying that the 9-168B is not applicable here. And it was in response to the questions presented by Mr. Wagner in the email which immediately precedes it.
Thank you, Mr. Baldwin.
If I may, Mr. Moderator, just, you know, I think that perhaps Representative McCormick may have missed this when I said it. Once we got that notice from them, I agree that we could go ahead on that basis, right? Like, I may disagree about what the statute says and may, you know, point to words that were omitted from the opinion as being relevant. But once we got that opinion, I agree, we can go ahead and rely upon it, right? Like, if we wanted to do those things, we would be covered by the opinion we got, regardless of what I think, right? So I want to say that just as a way of saying, like, the question of what you have to do is not really what we're about here, right? Like, I understand that people have different opinions about this stuff, and we can all sort of have a discussion about it, but I'm not saying you must do it this way.
The opinion that you have, Mr. Wagner, however, that 168B is the applicable statute and that the 90-day time frame is applicable, that's the problem. Because the Ada Carini from the Secretary of State's office has indicated that the statute that you're relying on to force us to come here on an emergency when half of...
Point of order, I believe the representative was cited as having used up their time.
Thank you, Representative McCormick. We're going to move to Representative Zesma.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to yield my time to my colleague, Representative Lambert, and then if I can come back at the end, I appreciate that.
Okay, Representative Lambert.
Mr. Moderator, Tom Lambert, District 3. My questions are regarding this Friday meeting. I'll leave it up to your discretion, Mr. Moderator, if we want to move on from that topic or not, but I have some questions of Ms. Politi. if we want to explore that further.
Sure, thank you.
Ms. Politi, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, you were just giving, I think, a little bit of testimony as to what happened on the Friday meeting. I just have a couple questions for you based on that.
Sure.
First of all, and I apologize, I have my dog barking in the background. One moment, please, while I tend to that. Or Ms. Politi, that meeting on Friday, do you recall what time that meeting started?
I might have gotten there around 1.
Do you recall what time the meeting concluded?
Matt had to leave, so that was probably, I think he generally leaves around 2:30.
And do you recall how long you were in the office for?
It would be from 1 until, let's see, I think I stayed until 4:30 that day.
And do you recall receiving a copy of Matt's email, which was part of our backup that was sent to the moderator, Mr. McDermott, that had a copy to you on that?
I did not check my email.
You didn't. So,
No, I was busy working.
and do you not check your emails when you're working?
Not as frequently as that. I wasn't expecting any emails.
So when did you first see the email that you were copied on that was from Mr. Wagner to Mr. McDermott?
I honestly didn't see it till Monday.
And what'd you do on Monday?
On Monday, I went into the office around, it was 12:30 I was there.
So from
Out.
the conclusion of your meeting up until 12:30, did you believe that there was any agreement on any of the polling places based on your discussion with Mr. Wagner?
No.
So upon seeing a copy of this email, what'd you do?
I discussed things with Matt and said, it's, thinking things over on the weekend, that I really, with the Secretary of State's, the attorney's email, there really is no reason to change the polling locations. To me, it just got way too complicated, and the voters don't need that.
Now, in Mr. Wagner's email, he represents that there's agreements that have taken place. You see, are you familiar with that? I don't know if you have the email in front
I
of you.
did read it on Monday, but it was a verbal discussion I had with him on Monday
And
about,
obviously, when he says that there's agreements, you disagreed with that fact, correct?
correct, yeah.
So what'd you seek to do to, I guess, alert Mr. Wagner of the fact there was no agreement?
I verbally told him there was no agreement.
Was that your first indication to Mr. Wagner that there were no agreements on those previous locations that you had discussed?
Well, I believe on Friday there was no agreement either.
So for Mr. Wagner to come here and say that there were agreements in place on Friday and to write that email at 3:25 in the afternoon that same day, he would be wrong?
Correct, he would be incorrect. I
Do you
did
have
not,
any idea as to why he would have that impression?
not really, no.
So you gave him no indication at all at the meeting that there would be actually agreements on those polling places?
No, there was no firm agreements on anything.
And you didn't check your email at all afterwards?
Not that day, no.
Okay, so from up until at 12:30 on Monday, you were under the impression that you were at square one. There's nothing that's actually been firmly agreed upon.
I think I read the email Monday before I went in there, but I didn't have to go in there until like 12:30 or 1 o'clock.
Do you recall when you read that email?
Sometime,
Mr. Moderator, point of order. I think we all agree that the memories of Mr. Wagner and Ms. Politi are at odds. I don't know the point of continuing this line of questioning.
So, you ready to wrap it up, Mr. Lambert, Representative Lambert?
I think I've made my point, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Representative Gale?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I have a general comment and then a question for Mr. Wagner. So I just want to say that I kind of want to speak to the issue of voter confusion here, because last election day I actually stood in front of my district's polling place literally all day, and I must have seen 10 to 15 different instances of individuals who were confused about their polling place. Um, about half of them were literally from the time they were changed 10 years ago. And then there was a whole group of people who were from the Alto, these new apartments that came in on Kings Highway, that did not know where they were supposed to register. And I actually became quite convinced on election day that we have a big problem in town, even before all of this, with communicating with the residents where their polling places were. And I don't know if that's a budget issue, and that's actually one of the things I want to ask Mr. Wagner about. But, you know, in the chaos of all of this, you know, the bottom line is that we all agree that enfranchisement of voters is the most important thing. And you know, I don't quite understand why there is such an issue in our town of there always being confusion about polling places. And I'm extremely concerned that with all this redistricting and all of this confusion, that what it's going to result in is voters just simply being confused, and voters always feel like it's their fault. Like they were supposed to know better, when in reality, it's our job. So now I'm going to ask Mr. Wagner a direct question, and this relates to what he said about the possibility of just keeping those polling places as they have been for the past 10 years, and what the requirements are to budget for having this extra staff there. As far as I know, when you go up to register, they always check your address, and it does not seem to me to be very difficult to separate people by address according to these new congressional districts. So I guess I want to know what the budget issue is from Mr. Wagner about this.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Hannah. It's nice to see you.
Sorry, I never said my name. Hannah Gale, District 6. I apologize.
First off, I'll say the routine process that we go through every time someone does register to vote, we respond to that application with a letter saying our approval or rejection of their application, as well as the polling place that they should report to, right? Those letters have not had the polling place since November, because we have not had polling places since November. But we send a letter in response to every individual application, in addition to sending a pre-election mailing to all voters in the town. In fact, we've done that now for 7 years running. A letter, like a postcard mailing that says the place that they should go to, as well as the details, what offices are on the ballot at that election, any special...
Stop you for 1 second, though. Is this only for new voters that you're doing this?
The letter goes to each new voter when they register, but we also send a postcard mailing to every address in the town. And for the last couple of years, we've actually not just sent it to every registered voter address in the town, but also, because we have election day registration now, every address in the town, whether there's a registered voter there or not, advising them of election procedures and the polling place that they would report to. So that's something we've been doing now for a number of years. Speaking of the Alto and the new apartments that are in your district, we did also do a mailing to them, furnishing them with voter registration cards when the apartments came online. So we try to keep on top of people and keep them up to date. And as you said, it's a polling place that hasn't changed, and there is still some amount of baseline confusion. I think that is not going to be surprising. I mean, as people move from one location to another in the town, a frequent problem that we have is people want to return to their old district. And so staying on top of that throughout the year is something that we're in some ways not required to do, but it takes up a lot of our time in the office, making sure people get the right ballot and avoiding situations where, you have 2 or 3 people show up at the wrong RTM district and now the results are in question. So that's, the things that occupy us in the spring and summer are largely those kinds of subjects. So I'll say, you had a question about the budget. Basically, if you
Say
have,
one thing, and it's sadly what I saw happen is when people showed up at the wrong polling place and were told that they couldn't vote, they just went home. And that is what I'm really concerned about here. So I'm sorry. Go on with what the issue is about, segregating people according to their addresses and having different administrators for them.
well, you just need different staff to do that. The statutes in a number of places say that the voting can't be in the same room or use the same tabulators if you do have different ballot styles. But I'll say that we have, and a number of other towns have, not followed those rules in the past. We sort of looked at them much more closely in the context of the redistricting process that was happening this year. So I was surprised by some of that stuff when I saw it in detail because honestly, we had not always separated them in that way. We have the equipment too. We were furnished with that equipment by the state. But when we received our equipment from the state in 2007, we at that time had 13 districts, and we received 26 tabulators in addition to 2 for absentee ballots. And we do not have the equipment to keep results and ballots separate for 17 different districts. We originally had budgeted for the rental of that equipment for the 2022 elections, with the idea that should the RTM have finished its redistricting, that money could be cut, and we had you could look at the Board of Finance budget hearings to see kind of a long discussion on that subject. But that was the money that we had identified. It was about $35,000 for equipment rental, about $25,000 for additional staffing, and the subject of the email exchange that Mr. Baldwin had with this attorney at the state was about basically, are you required to use these separate machines, or can you just have all the ballots run through the same machine? It was not about polling places. It was about sort of the machines and the budget question that we had. But those staffing requirements to say we're going to have a separate line of people handing out ballots and checking in names for this district that only has 59 voters in it, that doesn't go away just because you have everyone put their ballots through the same machine. And that is still going to blow through our budget, even if you say, well, take the risk of people getting the wrong ballots, go ahead and do that. You're still going to go over on staffing because all of the money we identified as accommodating a larger number of districts was removed by the Board of Finance. And I know, the partisan valence of this stuff changes from cycle to cycle. I was pretty upset by what they did. I did not think that was a responsible thing that they did to make that cut. It does reduce the options we have to keep a good, secure voting process for people. And the proposal that I'm making is to try and merge districts together in a way that avoids, those errors that really do pop up every time you make that decision to combine districts.
Based on what you're saying, I don't mean to interrupt because I really appreciate what you're saying, but I guess what the question I have is, could it be possible for the registrars to get together and come up with a budget request or an extension of your original budget that could be brought to the Board of Finance based on the needs that might come up having to do with keeping these polling places the same, just on the basis of fear of disenfranchisement of voters?
I'll say that is a part of the discussions that I tried to initiate in April when I was saying every time my counterpart would come in, which is usually about once a week, I would say, are you ready to talk about polling places? We've got to talk about these polling places. He'd say, I'm not going to discuss it. I've been directed not to discuss it. I said, well, if we're not going to fix the polling places, we need to get that money back in the budget. He said, I'm not going to discuss it. The question of do we file an appeal was something that was raised, and he was told not to engage with any discussions on these subjects. So, we did put a budget together that sort of anticipated these problems and budgeted appropriately to resolve them. And that money was cut by the Board of Finance, which I strongly disagree with. And my fellow department head was not willing to appeal to the RTM to have that money restored. And now here we are, right? I mean, so I appreciate your concern. I will say also that, the Board of Finance, when I discussed this with them sort of individually, gave every impression that they would not entertain any transfers from contingency for this purpose. I don't know why that is, but that was the very clear message that was given to me. I did see Mr. Bremer on this call earlier, and I thought maybe he was coming through to rain money on us, and that's something I always like if that's something he wanted to do while he was here, but I'm not sure if that's actually the case.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Wagner, for answering my questions. I'm beginning to get a picture, and my head is exploding.
Thank you, Representative Gale. The only person that actually had a question about the amendment was Representative Bateson. So I'm going to move to him.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. It wasn't a question on the amendment. It was a comment. These meetings are killing me. I read all this information. I think I have a line of logic, and then I hop in these meetings and pow. So I don't support the amendment for the simple fact that when I read Baldwin's opinion, when I read the Secretary of State's opinion, when I read Matt's email, I get all this stuff, but at the end of the day, I don't see the necessity to do this. I don't see where we're compelled to do this. My goal is the convenience to the voter. I think we're all creatures of habit. I voted Dwight. That's, election day. I'm sorry, guys. I don't get my postcards or whatever it is. I voted Dwight. I want to make it easy for people to vote. I don't want to change their polling place until I actually have to. So I'm of the opinion that I don't want to change polling places right now. I think we're perfectly comfortable running split districts within the polling places, which is what we've always done, or what we can do and are capable of doing. So I want to go that route. So I don't agree with the amendment. I don't support the amendment. And quite frankly, I don't support the underlying resolution. So I don't see the necessity of this. I just want us to see us, send people where they went last year. I think that's going to create the least amount of confusion. I'd rather get them in the building than tell them where to go. That's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bateson. All right, we're going to take the amendment to the motion to a vote right now. So I think, Ann Roche, we're going to do a voice vote, please.
Roll call, you mean? Roll call vote?
Yes, sorry. I'm
Ed
tired.
Bateson?
Tired myself.
Okay.
Ed Bateson, no.
Marty Fury? Amy Ruggiero? No. Is Marty on still?
Yes, no.
Thank you. Karen McCormick?
No.
Cindy Perham?
Yes.
Alex Durrell?
No.
Jeff Galdenzi?
Yes.
Tom Lambert?
Yes.
Sharon Pastilli?
Yes.
Laura Carson?
Who's Laura?
Laura Carson? She gone? I can come back. Alice Kelly?
Yes.
Marcy Spolier?
Yes.
Liz Ezema?
Yes.
Will Diaz?
Yes.
Josh Garskoff?
Yes.
Joe Siebert?
Yes.
Jay Wolk?
Yes.
Steve Burris?
Yes.
Hannah Gale?
No.
Andrew Graceffa?
Yes.
John Kuhn?
Yes.
Mark McDermott?
Yes.
Jill Vergara?
Yes.
Karen Wackerman?
Yes, and I believe Laura Carson's back on.
I'll come back. Hank Ferentz?
No.
Christine Brown?
Yes.
Christine Brown?
Yes.
Drew Georgiadis?
Yes.
Margaret Horton?
Yes.
Kenneth Astorita?
No.
Peter Britton,
No.
Frank Batiste,
No.
Story Tallman,
Wait, can you hold on 1 second? Hold on 1 second. So, Betsy, did you call? I had to walk away. It's Laura Carson. I missed the vote.
I'm
we
coming
got,
back to you now, Laura. How
Okay.
did you vote?
and it's not Betsy, it's Ann.
I mean, Ann, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Ann.
It's all right. Laura votes
Yes.
yes. Did I miss anybody else?
Lisa Havey.
I'm sorry, Lisa Havey is on?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I was late.
I'm sorry, what district are you, Lisa? I find you 6.
District 6?
And your vote is?
Absolutely.
Yes. 33. The amendment carries. Sorry.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, so we now have the
41 to 12.
amended motion in front of us, and Mr. Durrell, you had a question.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alex Durrell, RTM 3. Through you to Ms. Pastilli, Ms. Lambert, and Mr. Oh, I forgot how to pronounce it. You know, the other member of District 3. We have a split district. We also have the most votes of anybody, frankly, in the town. We always do, the vast majority of the time. I've been there 8 years, split district. Through me, Mr. Moderator, to the three of you, have you noticed any difficulty of election problems at Fairfield Woods Middle School with the 2 districts both voting in the same room? It has been done. It's been very simple. So if I can get a yes or no from the 3 of you, it would be appreciated.
Representative Pistilli, I'm sorry, my dog is barking. I have not seen any problems. I mean, like if you're in the wrong spot, you just have to move from one table to the other. The only thing that I don't know the answer to, and I don't know the order of items here through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Wagner, if there have ever had to be ballots thrown out in District 3 because there are 2 different sets of ballots in one polling location. Like the machines are set up to accept both ballots, right? Like after Mr. Galdenzi and Mr. Lambert speak, I'd like to hear from Mr. Wagner from the registrar's point of view if that's ever created a problem. But I don't know the order of events if I'm allowed to do that. So thanks.
If I can just get a 1-syllable yes or no answer from my 3 comrades in District 3, it would be appreciated. And then you can, I'll fly away. Yes or no?
You
Alex,
want
I've only been
one
here
syllable from me, Alex? Sorry, no, this is not possible.
Okay, so that sounds like no. Mr. Lambert?
Alex, I've only been here for 2 years,
Mr.
so
Moderator,
I am
isn't this
unaware.
just opinion? Mr. Moderator, isn't this
I'm sorry. Thank you, Representative Georgiades. Mr. Galdenzi and Mr. Lambert are new, so I wouldn't say they would be experts on whether or not this is it works there. So let's move on to Representative Pastilli.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a comment and then a question for Mr. Wagner. My comment is this. My dad served in Vietnam fighting tyranny overseas. My childhood was traumatic as a result of my dad's service to his country. I'm asking both sides to come to the table here in good faith as stewards of our democracy, just to get together and make decisions. Don't not show up for meetings. Don't start negotiating and then stop. People have died and lives have been wrecked for freedom, including my very own childhood. So I really take this very personally, and I know I'm slightly out of order here, but this is really emotional for me. We have the democracy for over 60,000 people at stake here. And let's act like it matters, and let's stop playing games. In terms of the 90 days, whether or not we have 90 days, listen, no, we can, listen, in terms of the 90 days, let's just move ahead and not worry about if we have 90 days or not. That's why we need to proceed.
Representative is making
Representative McCormick, Mr. Representative McCormick, I heard you. Representative Pastilli, please get to the point of what you want to talk about or what we're
Okay.
voting on right now.
Mr. Wagner, can you tell me who was directed to stop, like who directed stop negotiating on the polling places?
Yeah, certainly. When the redistricting committee had walked away from the table and said we're not going to hold any further meetings until the question of the charter revision and potentially designating a different number of districts was resolved, we sat down to discuss the question at that time. That was in March. And we received a call in the middle of that conversation. We got about 2/3 of the way through the list. And it was a Representative Iacono who directed my counterpart to stop negotiating at that time. He did not discuss it again until she authorized him to do so. At our meeting on Friday, what I did, because let's just say this is not my first time going through something like this, where, we have a discussion and whether it's an agreement or not is sort of in question later. I prepared a list on a sheet of paper that said listed each district in which we wrote each of our preferred options for each of the 17 districts. I put my 17 down. Kathy and Steve put their 17 down. They left the room to confer with Representative Iacono and gain approval for that list. They came back, and on that list, 13 of the 17 districts had the same item listed, the same location listed. Now, I guess I said that I was preparing this email to the moderator of the RTM, to the town clerk, as well as to my colleagues in the office, saying what the polling places were. I stated that at the time. I said, you need to go and get your authorization from Pam so, I can send this email before I leave. And there was certainly no confusion that was what was happening. I know Kathy took a picture of that list of our sort of two, the Democratic registrar column, the Republican registrar column, what items we had selected. Now I'll just say, I don't want to, that while we agreed on 13 of the spots, if I think just in extending sort of an assumption of good faith, that it may be that we agreed on 13 spots, but we did not have an agreement on 13 spots. And I think if that's the difference of interpretation in this, we don't need, I don't think need to dwell on it. I was sort of surprised on Monday after sending that email while people were still in the office saying, here's memorializing our meeting and what we discussed and what we agreed to in the meeting. I was surprised that such a different version could be told from that. And I certainly would not, try to imagine sending an email with people you're sitting in the room with that does not reflect the meeting that you just had with other people there who witnessed it. That would be extremely bizarre. So I think we could chalk it up to a good faith misunderstanding, but also that was, the nature of the meeting was, Kathy was told at noon that she should come in and negotiate the districts by Representative Iacono. She did. We worked on it. We came up with that list. Representative Iacono approved of it. And we had 4 left over that I thought we could probably split 50-50, each get sort of 2 of the ones we wanted. That unfortunately didn't come to pass, but that was the process up until that point.
So it was good faith up until a point, and then it was derailed.
I don't think we should assume it's not in good faith now. I just think I'm not privy to all the negotiations that happen, perhaps.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Spolier.
Representative Spolier, District 4. I just want to say that we're here now at this meeting. We need to vote today on this issue. It doesn't look like this is going to get resolved in the next any time. And in regard to voter transparency, the sooner we get the voting districts established, the sooner we can get the word out and the more information we can provide to the voters. And I think that's the important part here. So we're here now. We need to do our job. We need to vote on this. And if we weren't having the resistance that we've had in the past to talk about this, this would have been done already and we wouldn't be here. So let's get this done.
Thank you, Representative Spolier. Let me see here, sorry. Representative Batiste.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Frank Batiste, District 10. I had a question and a comment. My question is, in 13210, who determined the Pequot Library is a suitable polling place? And the reason I ask is I didn't hear all the locations Representative Wackerman listed, but I believe they're mostly all schools. And the Pequot Library has, one driveway entrance in and out of it that might be, 12, 13, 14 feet wide at best. There's not a lot of parking there. Westway Road's not very wide. Pequot Avenue itself is not very wide. I think there's about a 14-foot travel lane there. So you get people parking there. The only way to pass someone is to violate the double yellow center line of the road, which is a safety issue to me. So I don't know who the right person to ask on whether or not that's sustainable, but I was curious where that came from. And then just my comment is, as far as I'm concerned, the way I see it, I think it's less confusing for our citizens to keep them where they are now. And we could, change this for next year when that's all sorted out. It seems far less confusing to me to keep people polling where they are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Batiste. Representative Ruggiero.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Amy Ruggiero, District 1. I understand we're all here and the comment has been made over and over that we should just vote, but I feel like we've been brought here under false pretense. I'm not really sure why we didn't take the legal advice we were given, and we were brought for an emergency meeting, so I think that's difficult, especially when you have young children. But the only comment I'd like to make is I also just don't agree or understand why we need to do this in such an urgent fashion. And I agree with Representative Pistilli in the sense that we do need to be able to get together and work together for the sake of democracy. And it doesn't seem like that's happening. And I think it's extremely disappointing. So when we take this vote, there's no doubt how that will go. And it just, is a extreme frustration. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Representative Ruggiero. Representative McCormick, you have a motion to make?
Yes. Sorry, hang on one second. I'm trying to fix this here. Karen McCormick, District 2. I'd like to make a motion to continue the vote on the amendment at this point, to give both sides an opportunity to sit down to see if there is any possible way to come to an agreement on doing whatever we have to do to limit the amount of upset and turmoil that will come to the voters by moving the district. So what I mean by that is maybe there's a way to sit down where everybody can acknowledge we want to minimize the amount of disruption to the voters, while at the same time recognizing that we want to do as much as we can to make sure that we have a smooth and error-free election. But I think if both sides come to the table with this is my bottom line and I'm not going to budge, and this is my bottom line and I'm not going to budge, then I think there's something to be said that, folks have to start looking at this. This is for the betterment of the citizens of the town of Fairfield. This is not for political purposes. This is not for anybody's axe to grind. So I would make a motion to continue the vote on this underlying amendment and resolution for, I don't know, till the next regular meeting. I don't know when that's scheduled for, but that's the motion I'm making.
I have a second.
Moderator, we already have a motion on the table.
You're making.
What's the motion on the table is what?
The motion is the motion is what we amended to.
And I'm making a motion to continue the vote on the amendment until the parties have enough time to have one last set of discussions before having to ram this down everybody's necks, basically, to come to the table and come to a meeting of the minds, perhaps, so that there's not a complete bloodbath here where, you know, one party wins, and I don't mean party as in political party, but one group wins and the other group loses, and basically the citizens of Fairfield are not represented. That's the point of my motion. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. Do I have a second? Representative Astorita. Okay, we'll take it to a vote. Sorry, Ann, we'll have to do a roll call vote.
Point of order, did we vote on the last motion?
Yes.
She's voting to, we voted on the amendment to the motion. What Representative McCormick is motioning to continue that motion to the next meeting.
And Mr. Moderator, I had a comment on the amendment.
Representative Pistilli, you had a chance to speak.
Yeah, but I'm commenting on.
Could we vote on this,
Representative-
please? Let's vote on this, please.
Edward Bateson,
Yes.
Marty Fury,
Yes. Yes.
Marty, Amy Ruggiero,
Yes.
Karen McCormick,
Yes.
Cindy Perham,
No.
Alex Durrell,
Yes.
Jeff Galdenzi,
No.
Tom Lambert,
No.
Sharon Pistilli,
No.
Laura Carson,
No.
Alice Kelly, no. Marcy Spolier,
No.
Liz Ezema,
No.
Will Diaz,
No.
Josh Garskoff,
No.
Joe Siebert,
No.
Jay Walk,
No.
Steve Barris,
No.
Hannah Gale,
Yes.
Andrew Graceffa,
No.
Andrew, Boston, Lisa
Sorry.
Havey.
No.
He
Okay,
said
thank-
no.
Gotcha. Lisa Havey,
No.
John Kuhn,
No.
Mark McDermott,
No.
Jill Vergara,
No.
Karen Wackerman,
No.
Hank Ferentz,
Yes.
Christine Brown,
No.
Drew Georgiadis,
No.
Margaret Horton,
No.
Ken Astorita,
Yes.
Peter Britton,
Yes.
Frank Patisse,
Yes.
Dory Tallman,
Yes.
and is Marty on Fury? No vote.
Marty was on, she voted yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, thanks.
Yes, I voted yes. Hello? Hello?
So that motion fails.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, back to the motion on the table here. Representative Zesma.
I don't have a comment about the motion, so we can proceed with voting, and I'll make my comment at the end.
Representative Wackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm puzzled by some of the comments that folks on the other side of the aisle needed more time to understand this, because their minority leader has been deeply involved in this for weeks, maybe months, I don't know. So she knows a lot about it and could fill you in on it. And the fact that nothing could get done, it's weird to hear about cooperation, because Mr. Wagner's been trying to get this done for weeks. It should never have come to the point where it was before us. And I think it's just time to pass this amendment now. I also, well, that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Let's
Hey,
see.
Mark, Peter Britton, District 10.
Hold on, Peter. Is your name in the chat here?
Oh, sorry, no. I thought you were about done. So.
No. no, I'm just trying to go through to get to people who haven't spoken yet. So you're going to be next on the list after Representative Perham.
Representative Perham, District 2, through you, Mr. Moderator, Karen McCormick is on the committee for redistricting, right? So she did have time to communicate her desires and needs throughout the meetings.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Redistricting is not before the RTM tonight, and it's not part of anything germane to what we're doing here.
I know, I just was wondering, like, you said you didn't have all the information that you need and you wanted continuance.
I never said that. I never said that.
But continuing means you need more opportunities to ask questions, and you feel
I didn't say that. I did not say that. You're actually changing what I said. What I said was this would give an opportunity for the registrar of voters to go back to the table and to make a good faith effort to come to some kind of terms, recognizing that neither party in that negotiation, I don't mean political party, is perhaps going to get exactly what they want. That's what I said. It had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with me asking questions.
I must have misunderstood. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I think the point is the registrar of voters have had this in front of them for some time now. And it should not have gotten to here. Let's see, Mr. Britton, I'm sorry, Representative Britton.
Hey, Peter Britton, District 10. Question, I'm thinking in particular the Pequot Library, but I imagine all of these other locations, have they been cleared with regard to being polling places, and that is all approved? And in particular, I'm asking about the Pequot Library. Has the Pequot Library agreed to be a polling place?
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. This was discussed and addressed by Matt Wagner earlier, and all those questions.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Mr. Wagner, Pequot Library can be used as a polling place. Is that correct?
That is correct. We had a number of options, and we have a spectacular map on our wall in our office, which I invite you all to come in and see, with all of the options that we looked into, communicating with people in charge of those spots. Some of the districts where we haven't been able to identify a polling place, there are spots that are good, but we didn't get a commitment from the facility, so we haven't put it before you. Pequot Library is excited to have us. Obviously, I think they're well-loved in the community and in the neighborhood in particular. And I did hear on Friday the concern that was raised about Pequot was parking, which I know another member of the RTM referenced. So on Monday, we actually did a parking survey of Pequot. We went every 2 hours during their opening hours. We found that they actually had more parking spots available at every interval throughout the day than inside their parking lot, not just on the street, than any of the public schools do on election day, because the public school, absent the high schools, mind you, but the public schools have professional development when school is not in session on election day. So we actually do hear sometimes parking complaints about a regular school, but Pequot had 28 to 38 spots available at all points during the day on a weekday, Monday, when we went through and checked. So yeah, be mindful of that, and I agree that that would be a good reason, unsuitable parking. I'll also just add that the district is serving about 23. That district contains about 2,300 voters, whereas a normal Fairfield polling place has upwards of 4,000. So while it has more parking than most public schools during the day, it also would have half the voter volume of those locations. So I'm not really concerned about it from the parking perspective, but yeah, we did secure a commitment from the library's director that they would make it available to us, and we negotiated some of the stuff about access to the site and how we would get in the morning and that kind of stuff. So we've gotten a good commitment from them and are sort of well on our way with that process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Britton. Any further? You good?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. 16 out of the 17 polling locations are in the schools except for Pequot Library. But with that said, there are only actually 12 voting locations. There aren't 17. Right? just get to, all right. Representative Batiste, you had, I know you spoke before, but I don't see anybody else so that hasn't spoken.
Thank you. Frank Batiste, District 10. I think part of my question was answered about the permission with Pequot Library. And then my only other question with it was, has anyone spoken to the residents around there? Are they also on board with having a polling place there? You know, it's not typically there, so just curious.
So the question for Mr. Wagner.
We haven't done any formal survey. We may, if you're interested in that, Mr. Batiste, we could talk with the town attorney about whether we're authorized to solicit public opinion of people in the area, which something that's come up recently. But you know, if that's something you're interested in, we can certainly talk to people. But you know, someone's always going to live near a polling place wherever you have it. So I don't expect from what we saw that the parking would be in excess of the capacity of the parking lot. So in terms of like things like Derby Day or the book sale or whatever, where you have, you know, visitors from afar kind of all over the neighborhood, I wouldn't expect it to be something like that. And those events have not, to my impression, right, I don't know for sure, but it doesn't seem to have strained the relationship between the library and the community. It seems like the people in the neighborhood are fond of the library still, unlike, for example, something like the university students in the beach area who wear out the welcome of the people nearby them sometimes. So no, I'm not concerned, but I could certainly mail something out if you want some more data on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Batiste. Representative Bateson, you had another comment?
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 1. I got to tell you, I've been doing this for years. It's not often that I get offended or get upset at what I hear or the tone of meetings, but this one has. If I'm I'll put myself in the position of negotiating this or discussing it. If I don't believe in what you're doing or support it, and I want to stop negotiating because I don't believe it's going to further what I support, not continuing to negotiate is not bad faith. I don't understand how we can be accused, or people on my side of the aisle be accused of not upholding democracy. I really find that offensive. My belief is that there's no necessity to do this. Okay, we can hold these elections in the same polling places that we did last year, and that's my belief. And I ask people to respect it. We're not getting that here. We're getting yelled at to comply. And quite frankly, that's tyrannical. And I take offense to that. We have, just because we disagree, respect it. That's all I'm asking. Don't accuse us of being undemocratic. I find that offensive. And I really wish people would retract those types of comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bateson. Representative Bastilli, you spoke already. You have another comment?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to say, you know, we're supposed to be coming to the table and getting through this process really quickly, and it's been dragging on. So that's the point. Like, to disagree just to make it drag on, that's the issue. And so
that is not the issue. That is not the issue.
Excuse me,
Okay. All right, you know,
Mr. Bateson.
Representative Bastilli, okay, I'm gonna cut you both off there. Don't need to have this arguing. Representative Zesma.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I'd like to try to clarify some misconceptions I've heard and some disturbing statements. We are here because of a literal masterclass in obstruction. It began on the redistricting committee when the Republicans, who started out, it seemed, in good faith, made some progress until someone pulled the plug, and then they completely stopped the process. So that was obstruction number one. Then the worst kept secret in town, which Mr. Wagner thankfully has confirmed for us is Minority Leader Pam Iacono has been directing the Registrar
Point of
of
order,
Voters,
Mr. Moderator.
who
Point of
she has
order.
absolutely no authority over, to stop
Representative
negotiating
Zesma has
these
Yeah.
polling places.
Representative Zesma, I think we're going to end it there, and we're going to go to the vote now.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody want the motion reread?
No.
Seeing nobody, Ann?
Ready. Ed Bateson,
No.
Marty Fury,
No.
Amy Ruggiero,
No.
Karen McCormick,
Absolutely not.
Cindy Perham,
Yes.
Alex Durrell,
No.
Jeff Galdenzi,
Yes.
Tom Lambert,
Yes.
Sharon Pistilli,
Yes.
Laura Carson,
Absolutely, yes.
Alice Kelly,
Yes.
Marcy Spoliar,
Yes.
Liz Ezema,
Yes?
Will Diaz,
Yes.
Josh Garskoff,
Yes.
Joe Siebert,
Yes.
Jay Walk,
Yes.
Steve Barris.
Yes.
Did we lose Steve?
He
Yes.
said yes.
Gotcha. Hannah Gale,
No.
Andrew Graceffa,
Yes.
Lisa Havey,
Yes.
John Kuhn,
Yes.
Mark McDermott,
Yes.
Jill Vergara,
Yes.
Karen Wackerman,
Yes.
Hank Ferentz,
No.
Christine Brown,
Yes.
Drew Georgiadis,
Yes.
Margaret Horton,
Yes.
Kenneth Astorita,
No.
oh, sorry, Ken, I didn't hear you.
No.
Thank you. Peter Britton,
No.
Frank Batiste,
Absolutely not.
Story Tallman,
No.
and the motion carries.
Thank you.
It's
And
20 to
thank you,
11.
everyone, for your conversation tonight. Make a motion to adjourn. Representative Wackerman, seconded by Representative Horton. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Bye.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.